Welcome to another RackForms build update video. I'm Macaroni, lead developer at RackForms. In this video, we're going to do something a little bit different. I was kind of looking at our changelog here, and I figured that instead of talking about, which in this case really amounts to a bunch of fixes, I'd instead almost take a step back and talk a little bit more broadly for a couple minutes about some of the overarching changes that have been happening in RackForms lately, which are hopefully making your life as a developer much more easy and possibly even fun. So to that end, I wanted to talk about three features which have been added recently, which maybe you didn't actually see if you've updated in that time span. So the first of those is the API manager. This one's really simple. It simply allows us to save API credentials for systems that we use in RackForms. It saves us a lot of typing. The other big one is the analytics manager. So essentially what this does is if I have a job that I want to collect analytics on, all I have to do is select any of the pages in the job, go under collect analytics data and set it to yes. When I build this job now, RackForms is collecting analytics information on that job. In fact, if I refresh my editor right here, the editor actually goes out, it sees that we have analytics data for some jobs, and it'll then automatically create an icon for us to display that information. So for example, if I refresh my page a couple times here, and then I reload my page, you can see here now that I get this analytics icon, and if I click on it, it shows how many visits I've had to the page, unique visitors, completion percentage, etc. Again, there's zero configuration for this. It automatically shows you that data. Finally, the last thing that we had is, let's say I'm working on a job, and I've been working on this guy for a while, maybe 10-15 hours, and I get a little bit sloppy and I accidentally delete my page right here. Well, that's kind of a mistake, but not anymore, because we have the beautiful history manager in RackForms. So the history manager simply allows us to, at any point, redo or undo any operation that we perform in RackForms. As we can see, this includes deleting pages, but also applies to things like changing field names, adding, deleting fields, changing colors, etc. It's an incredibly powerful feature. It's not enabled by default, because not every user is going to want to have that, but if you do need to enable history, it's really simple to enable. All you have to do is go to your toolbox icon right here and say enable history, and you'll now be saving everything that you do in RackForms. One of the big changes, now talking specifically about some of these changes here, I don't want to ignore this list completely. One of the big changes is the toolbox now can be customized. So it used to be that we'd have one view, if you will, of the toolbox. We can now actually change this using the toolbox display selector here. So I can select things like text only, text and icons, or icons only. So it gives you the ability to kind of customize the editor in the way that works best for you. Now, one of the reasons why this is important to real briefly say is that if you're an experienced RackForms developer, the icons only mode is really nice because it has a higher density of icons in the same area as the other modes do, or I should say compared to the other modes. And this makes it much easier to kind of see more fields at once. And that's a big boon to developers. Now, speaking of developers, probably the biggest change that happened in this series are some of the changes and improvements to the code editing workflow in RackForms. So there's two main things. The first is we now have these code shortcuts on each one of the pages. So for example, it used to be that if I wanted to take a look at the PHP code for this page, I'd have to select the page and then click on Page ASP top code right here, right? And I'd bring up my code editor. Well, no longer. Now all I have to do is mouse over the PHP or JS, and I'll bring up the code file for that particular job. Now, as a big hint, one of the ways I've been using this is actually like this. I'll take the field and move it over, and then I'll use another brand new feature, which is I can now resize the code editor window. I know, a small change, but sometimes the small changes are the biggest. And here's why. Along with the ability to quickly select code, I can actually select other pages code with simply a single click. So you can see here now that as I'm working on this job, I can very quickly switch between the PHP and JavaScript code for each one of these pages in a way that makes it incredibly efficient, right? I don't have to click on a header and click on a link. I just say, you know what, I want to see the PHP code for this page, or I want to see the the JavaScript code for the page, etc. So it's very simple to work with now. Finally, the last big change that we had here is it's not super exciting in itself, but it portends to one of the core goals in 2014 with RackForms, which is to make working with custom SPA single-page applications easier. So the basic idea is I have this form field right here, and it used to be that the element position for everything was set off to the left. But I figured that would actually be a better user experience if this field was set off to the right of the page. Now I could have certainly done that before with a little bit of custom CSS, but now with element position I could simply say set that to the right and give it 30 pixels a margin, and now it does exactly that as I build the form right here. You can see that it follows that edge beautifully. And so really the big idea here is to draw attention to those things which save us time. The API manager to save us typing, the history manager to save, I guess, our sanity, right? We don't have to worry about not be able to undo a change that we had. The code editor for making working with custom code easier. The toolbox to make working with RackForms work better with your style. All these changes and many more to come are what our focus in 2014 is: make RackForms better. It used to be back in 2007 when we started building RackForms, it was all about features, 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 features. We've got more features than anybody else. If you own RackForms already, you know that. What's different now is making those features work better for you. And so it's really exciting as we go throughout 2014 here to add some of these big things in. And so, yeah, that's basically it. I'm going to leave you then with a quick look at this little application that we've been building here. Again, just to almost kind of show you what's possible with RackForms here. So the basic idea with this application is it allows us to take an Apache log file, use that beautiful HTML5 drag and drop to then load all the Google AdWords clicks for a specified date range. So I can say I want to show the 10th through the 11th right here, and I can now mouse over and get details about any of these keywords that I've clicked, right? So these are the types of things that RackForms can do for us. The tools are there. We're trying to make those tools now easier and more powerful to use. So if you have questions, as always, about anything that you've seen on this video, info@rackforms.com is where we can be reached, or our phone number is at the top of our website at rackforms.com. And thanks for watching.